When my HOA pumped dry the natural spring that ran through my land for generations, for the sake of flood risk, they had no notion they were unleashing nature's ultimate vendetta. Their neat lawns turned into swamps, and their designer kitchens flooded with the same water that they thought they could control. They did not realize I was about to bring to light a conspiracy more far-reaching than anybody could have anticipated. "They can't take your water," my wife Sarah shouted, slapping the official HOA paper down on our kitchen table. I held the paper in trembling hands, reading the words that would upend our peaceful life. The natural spring that had bubbled on my family's land for over a century had been officially designated a flood hazard by the Cascade Heights HOA. Our HOA president, Victoria Reed, had been eyeing my spring since she bought the house 6 months prior. She condescended to refer to it as an eyesore during her first tour of the neighborhood, sneering that muddy puddle depresses property values, without ever pausing to ask whether it provided fresh water to local wildlife and cooled our section of the neighborhood on hot summers. The notice advised me that I had 30 days to remove the spring or face a fine of $500 per day. I was sick. This spring was not water. It was my grandfather's legacy. The stone paths he laid around it, the willows he had planted, which were now 40 feet tall, and memories of him showing me how to skip rocks on its surface when I was 5. 2 days later, I went to the emergency HOA meeting with pictures of the spring through all of the seasons in pocket and a petition of 12 neighbors who had the same love. Victoria sat at the head table like a queen on her throne, surrounded by royal board members. Even Martha, my next-door neighbor who had borrowed sugar from me in the past, sat beside Victoria, avoiding eye contact with me. "Spring is a genuine threat to the foundations of our neighborhood," Victoria stated, waving a thick geology report. "This survey confirms potential flooding that will cause millions of damages." I stood up, trembling legs but steady voice. "That spring has been there since before these houses were even built. There's never been one flood." "Times have changed, water tables shift," Victoria said smoothly. "We can't risk our children for sentimental reasons." "Which children?" I asked. "The house closest with children is 3 blocks away." Whispers hummed through the room. Some of the neighbors and I nodded. Others looked agitated, whispering insurance and mortgage. Martha finally spoke up. "I've noticed a lot more mosquitoes lately. Standing water breeds disease." Yet she still would not meet my eyes. That was when it came to me. This was not about flooding. Victoria had wanted my property value to decline so her developer friends could purchase it cheaply. I had overheard her at the summer barbecue talking about maximizing land use potential in the area. "I want to see that geological survey," I insisted. "Who did it? When?" Victoria's smile narrowed. "The report's confidential to prevent the surveyor from harassment." "That's not how property assessments work." Called Mr. Peterson, a retired lawyer down the street. "Homeowners have a right to see any reports made about their property." Victoria's face flushed. "We're not here to debate procedure." "All in favor of spring removal?" she barked. 7 hands shot up, all board members and their close friends. The motion passed. As the room emptied, I caught Martha in the parking lot. "Why are you doing this? You used to bring your grandkids to feed the ducks at my spring." She glanced around nervously. "Victoria promised to approve my home addition if I voted for her. I need that extra bedroom for when my daughter comes to stay." My heart sank. Victoria was buying votes. I drove home in a daze, wondering how to fight a system that was against me. That night at 2 a.m., I couldn't sleep. I listened to the rumble of trucks outside. I looked through the curtains and saw 2 trucks parked along my property line. Shadows moved in the moonlight, hauling equipment toward my spring. I grabbed my phone and flashlight and ran outside in my pajamas. "Hey, this is private property." The men froze. One stepped forward. Marcus, the HOA maintenance manager. "Just doing preliminary measurements as authorized by the board," he said. "At 2 a.m.? Without even notifying me?" From the shadows, Victoria emerged, clipboard in hand. "The HOA has 24-hour access rights for safety inspections," she said. "It's in your contract." "This isn't an inspection. You're planning something." She smiled coldly. "We're being proactive. Go back to bed." I stood my ground until they left, but I knew they would be back. The next day I called 3 lawyers. 2 declined when they were told HOA dispute, and the third wanted $5,000 just to consider my case. In desperation, I rushed to the county records building. WRB. I ran outside. Stop! This is illegal! Victoria barely looked at me. Article 7, Section 3 of the HOA bylaws provides us with jurisdiction to act on safety concerns, she said, waving documents. Judge Keller signed this emergency order last night. I stood helplessly by as my spring, pure and running for over 100 years, turned into cracked mud. Sarah ran outside, documenting everything. This is criminal, she said, voice shaking. Marcus moved forward. Ma'am, you need to stop recording. This is private HOA business. This is my property, I said, and that's my spring you're destroying. By noon, the spring was defeated. The willows hung their heads. The ducks waddled in confusion. That afternoon, Martha was laboring at her fence, planting new roses. Sorry about your water feature, she said without looking up. Property values should rise now. I stood in awe. You realize that spring provided groundwater for this whole neighborhood, don't you? She shrugged. Victoria says city water's fine. That evening, I spoke with Sam, a college acquaintance who is a hydrologist. His face became stern as he examined my maps of my land. This is bad, he growled. Really bad. Your spring wasn't pretty to look at. It was a pressure relief valve. Without it, water's going to do its own thing, probably through people's basements. A glimmer of hope had developed in me. Maybe I could still show the importance of the spring. Sam and I worked for a week collecting data. He set up monitors in the soil and groundwater gauges. The pressure readings were appalling. I tried to make this a topic at the next HOA meeting, but Victoria had changed the rules. Now only board members could put agenda items in. Outraged, I went public again. Local news picked it up. Historic spring ruined by HOA. Environmental groups voiced outrage. Victoria struck back, employing a PR firm to portray me as a disgruntled homeowner. Then the floods started. The Johnsons first, 3 inches of water in their finished basement, the Garcias, the Parkinsons, even Martha. I watched Martha shoveling water out of her basement, her precious roses buried in mud. Emergency HOA meetings became a weekly occurrence. Victoria kept insisting, these are isolated incidents, old pipes, poor drainage. But Sam's data dictated otherwise. Without the spring, the aquifer was forcing water up through any crack it could find. On the Facebook group, neighbors exploded with complaints. My sump pump's running nonstop. There's a spring bubbling up in my backyard. My foundation guy says this could cost $50,000 to fix. Property values crashed. Houses went up for sale. The news returned. HOA's decision creates neighborhood nightmare. Victoria got desperate, cursing the city, cursing the weather, even blaming me for somehow sabotaging the land. Then came retired attorney Mr. Peterson with a bombshell. Follow the money. We discovered Victoria's brother-in-law did not merely make fake surveys. He owned a drainage company. Victoria had awarded him a $2 million deal to fix Cascade Heights' water issues, the same firm that had drained my spring dry. I complained to the state attorney general. Police came quickly. Victoria tried to resign quietly, but residents demanded a public forum. The school auditorium was packed. When Victoria took the mic, boos erupted. She spoke of unforeseen consequences and acting in good faith. No one believed it. Then Sarah played the trump card, a tape from that morning. Victoria, whispering to Marcus, after property values decline, my developer friends will buy the whole block. We'll all be millionaires. The crowd erupted. Board members resigned on the spot. Martha publicly apologized. Victoria was arrested that night, charged with fraud, conspiracy, and HOA funds misappropriation. Her brother-in-law's business collapsed. The developer scam collapsed. But the community was still a disaster. It took a federal disaster declaration to bring aid. Engineers worked months to restore the natural flow. My spring was restored, though it would take years to fully recover. The total cost over $10 million, most of which came from Victoria's forfeited assets and HOA insurance. Victoria got 15 years in prison. Martha now leads a new HOA, an HOA committed to preservation. She tends a memorial garden where the spring flows again, teaching children about working with nature, not against it. As for me, I learned something too. Sometimes the best revenge is not some intricate plot. It is merely allowing nature to take its course. Water finds its own path, and so does justice. The knock at the door woke me up from sleep. I glanced at my phone. 3:27 a.m. Who visits at this time? Glancing through the peephole, I saw my neighbor Bill standing there, drenched and frantic. "The water's everywhere," he huffed as I opened the door. My basement was flooded, 3 feet deep. I zipped on my jacket. Something was not right. Bill's house was on the hill above mine. Water shouldn't flow that way. The following day, I spent hours at the county records office. My fingers yellowed from dusty file folders. The clerk raised an eyebrow when I requested more maps. But I needed answers. That's when I learned about it. A 1952 geologic map that discovered Cascade Heights sat on natural water pipes deep beneath the earth. My spring wasn't just an ornamental feature, just one piece of a clever system regulating water pressure in the entire community. By capping it, Victoria had turned our community into a time bomb, ready to blow. In my house, I called Sam, my college friend who's a hydrologist. "You're perched on top of a water bomb," he concurred after scanning my report. The spring served as a pressure relief. Plug it up, and the water moves elsewhere, likely through foundations. I needed further proof. Leasing a ground-penetrating radar, I mapped water movement under streets. The scans were horrific, doubled water pressure within 2 weeks. Half of the neighborhood would be underwater by spring if this continued. The next HOA meeting was packed. Homeowners were complaining about wet basements and cracked foundations. Victoria occupied the head of the table, serene in her designer ensemble. "These are isolated incidents," she persisted, playing with documents. "Our drainage expert assures us." "Your expert never even visited the location?" I rose and interrupted, holding up the geological survey. "This verifies our spring was key to water control." Martha stood up, rushing to Victoria's defense. "Victoria has increased our property values by 20%. Why should we trust you over our successful board president?" Murmurs of agreement circulated among the crowd. It was clear that Victoria had bought their loyalty with empty promises. "Ask yourself why she forced this project," I pressed. "Why pay consultants who never came to the property? Why disregard decades of natural balance?" Victoria's smile pinched. "This meeting is adjourned," she motioned, but Bill interrupted. "My insurance adjuster suggests that the flooding is caused by disturbed groundwater, and they refuse to cover the damage." The room erupted in nervous chatter. Victoria banged her gavel insistently, but order would not return. Next, I rushed outside to intercept Sam. "There's more," he fretted. "I followed the drainage contractor. Victoria's brother-in-law runs it. She's being paid kickbacks." "How can you verify it?" I inquired. "Working on it. But you'd do well to be cautious. She has powerful connections." I soon installed security cameras all around my property. If Victoria was not truthful, she might try anything to silence me. Sure enough, at midnight, I caught on camera someone tampering with my water meter. The man wore a hood up, but I recognized him. It was Marcus, the HOA maintenance manager, trying to set me up for the flooding. I duplicated the footage onto 3 separate drives. This was bigger than I'd imagined. The following week, additional basements overflowed. The neighborhood pool cracked under pressure from below. Even Victoria's supporters began questioning her decisions. I worked at night studying water rights law and discovered that the HOA had violated several state statutes by making significant drainage changes without permits. At the library, I found newspaper articles on Victoria's previous HOA. She'd resigned suddenly after accounting irregularities. The pattern was clear, but I needed concrete evidence. Then Martha showed up at my front door. Mascara streaked down her face. "My roses are dying," she sobbed. "My lawn's completely waterlogged. Victoria promised me this would never occur." "Did she promise you anything else?" I murmured. Martha hesitated, then nodded. "A seat on the board. Extra votes on landscape committees." I told her what I'd discovered, and her eyes widened with each sheet. "She's been playing all of us," she whispered. "Will you help me expose this?" I said, and Martha braced her shoulders. "Yes, I have emails," she said. She gave several residents special favors in exchange for their patronage. We built our case together. Additional neighbors came forward with reports of bribes and threats. Vic. Security tapes of her receiving cash from contractors sealed the deal. Guilty on all counts, said the judge. Victoria received 15 years for fraud, environmental crimes, and conspiracy. Her property was seized to fund the cleanup of the neighborhood. But a court victory didn't immediately restore the homes that were flooded. Engineers worked overtime to develop systems that would restore the natural water flow. The spring needed to be reopened carefully so that it would not be destroyed again. Insurance battles continued. Some residents sold their ruined houses at huge losses, while others brought a class action suit against Victoria and her allies. I recorded everything along the way. Local universities requested my research to use as case studies on environmental justice. The story spread like wildfire. David and HOA Goliath. Martha surprised everybody by volunteering for the interim HOA board. I had a hand in making this mess, she conceded. I want to assist in cleaning it up. Altogether, we enacted new bylaws requiring environmental studies and transparent books. No more backdoor deals or overnight projects. Contractors worked throughout winter, putting in proper drainage and preparing to return the spring to its former beauty. The aquifer was slow to recover its equilibrium after months of disruption. By spring, there was beginning to spread around Cascade Heights hopeful optimism. Houses were drained, foundations repaired, and a lesson learned about blind trust. When water started flowing once again from my newly restored spring, children came to observe. Their amazement reminded me why this battle had been worth it, keeping nature beautiful for generations to come. Victoria's empire had fallen, as had her waterlogged mansion. But out of that ruin, our community had grown stronger, wiser, and more united than ever. She embezzled over $800,000 from the HOA, presenting the payments as emergency repairs and flood protection, he explained, holding up charts that made the jury gasp. When court adjourned, reporters gathered outside. How does it feel to see justice served? One of them asked. This isn't about revenge, I replied thoughtfully. It's about accountability. Our community trusted her, and she betrayed that trust. That night, emergency responders worked double time as yet another basement flooded. The local news featured our story, along with video of flooded houses. HOA President's Greed Causes Environmental Disaster, the title read. My phone rang with calls from residents. Some thanked me for telling the truth, while others accused me of causing their destroyed homes. The neighborhood was split, but at least now they knew the truth. The next day, Victoria's defense fell apart when emails surfaced that indicated she had hatched the scheme months ago before anyone had even registered a complaint about my spring. Target the water feature first, she had told her brother-in-law. Create a problem, then offer our solution. The jury deliberated for only 3 hours. Victoria slumped in her seat as the judge recited her offenses: fraud, embezzlement, environmental destruction, and racketeering. Miss Reed, you abused a position of trust for personal gain, inflicting incalculable damage on your community, said the judge. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison and order full restitution to the victims. As bailiffs led Victoria away, she glared at me for the final time, spitting, I hope you're happy. I'm not happy, I replied honestly, but I am relieved that the truth has come out. Outside, news vans lined the street. Cascade Heights had a long way to heal. Insurance companies denied most claims, labeling the catastrophe man-made. Many families were financially devastated. Marcus, the ex-maintenance manager who had helped drain my spring, appeared before me with a nervous look. I'm sorry, he told me. Victoria threatened to fire me if I didn't cooperate. My child needs medical care, and I couldn't risk losing my insurance. I understood his situation even though I couldn't quite forgive him. What matters now is healing our community, I told him. I looked out of my kitchen window that night, seeing emergency pumps working overtime in neighboring backyards. The loss of the spring had triggered a chain reaction of events no one could have predicted. Property values plummeted by 40% overnight, and several families had already left, unable to afford the repairs. My phone rang. It was Sam, a hydrologist friend. I've been examining the water table data. he said with urgency. We have to rebury that spring shortly, or it's irreversible. When? I asked him. 6 months, or the aquifer would collapse in a straight line, he said to me. That would affect not only Cascade Heights, but 3 neighborhoods surrounding us. The guilt weighed on my conscience. It was Victoria's greed that got us here, but now it was up to us to right it. Rain began to fall as I witnessed water puddle in. This is what happens when someone cuts corners. We're doing this right, even if it takes longer. The surprise occurred while digging. In the course of excavation, we discovered a network of ancient Native American water control, stone canals that naturally regulated the spring for centuries before civilization. Our indigenous consultant, Dr. Sarah Clearwater, was amazed. Your spring wasn't ornamental, she informed the people gathered. It was part of a high-tech system that kept this whole community in balance. This discovery changed things. Instead of simply rehabilitating the spring, we blended ancient wisdom with modern engineering. The project was made into an environmental model of sustainable development, and it attracted the attention of environmental groups all over the nation. Schools in the neighborhood visited the students to observe the water ecology. Martha started a community garden based on responsible irrigation methods. Ex-doubters started noticing the connection between nature and public health. The day we finally opened the spring, hundreds gathered to witness the first clear water bubble up. Children yelled and adults wiped away tears. The gurgle of running water, which had been absent for so long, was music. I want to thank all of you who believed in this project, I said to the crowd, especially those who initially opposed it but were willing to learn and change. Martha stepped forward as the new HOA president. I'm proud to announce our revised bylaws. From now on, all environmental decisions will require community input and expert consultation. The transformation extended beyond water management. Property values began recovering as our story attracted environmentally conscious buyers. Cascade Heights became known not for its HOA drama, but for its innovative approach to suburban ecology. 6 months after they had been restored, our neighborhood hosted its initial spring festival. Artists created murals showing the aquifer system. Restaurants based on the local neighborhood provided foods that used Martha's community garden's herbs. Children played in defined sections of the spring, laughing as it sounded through the neighborhood. Victoria's old mansion, taken from her by officials, was renamed the Cascade Heights Environmental Education Center. Inside the center, exhibits revealed the catastrophe and its education. A high-profile exhibit brought out the bribing emails and fake geology reports as a warning against untrammeled power. I led many tours telling our story to individuals. The spring taught us that everything's connected, I'd tell them. When we try to control nature without knowing it, we create problems we can't even imagine. Not everything worked out. A few families never returned, their trust in the community lost. Others still bickered over repair costs. But we learned to work together, to question authority when we need to, and to respect the natural systems that sustained us. 1 year after repair, the spring was officially designated as protected. No future HOA could exploit it without serious environmental study. We put in place legal safeguards so another Victoria would not occur. The most satisfying moment came during a surprise inspection. State officials confirmed that our aquifer had fully stabilized. Your community's response to this crisis is remarkable, the lead inspector said. You've turned a disaster into a blueprint for environmental stewardship. Martha and I'd sit alongside the spring at night and watch fireflies perform across the water. Remember how I complained about your gaudy water feature? She'd laugh. I was crazy. We all were. We let someone convince us that nature was ugly, I'd respond. The spring had grown into something more than water. It symbolized redemption and strength. Picnics were held on its banks. Wedding photographers utilized it as a background. Immigrants heard about it and promised to keep it intact. As I type here, children are learning to identify native flowers in our learning garden. Solar panels provide power for the community center, and rain barrels collect water for irrigation. We've become the change we needed. Victoria did her time and dropped from view. Last I heard, she was living a quiet life somewhere else in the country. Sometimes I wonder if she ever understood the magnitude of what she'd done, both to the environment and to trust. The spring flows clear and strong today, its gentle gurgle a testament to nature's resilience and power. What began as a person's greed became a community's wake-up call. We learned that sometimes the worst disasters create the most significant changes. As I watched new families arrive, drawn by our story of ecological redemption, I see that Victoria did us an unintentional service. She showed us what happens when power is unbridled, when greed outstrips responsibility, and when we ignore the lessons of nature. Now, every bubbling burst of spring water conveys the same lesson: respect, harmony, and watchfulness. The spring Victoria attempted to destroy was the center of our new community, a reminder of what occurs when humans opt for cooperation rather than control, for understanding rather than dominance, and for harmony rather than profit.